Okay, so welcome. This web class is Discover the Secret Link Between Gut Health and Weight Loss. My name is Jody. I'm the CEO and founder of Awaecnan, and our very special guest is John Ellerman and Jonathan Ellerman from ProGood. Just give you a little bit of background on me. So, like I said, I'm the CEO and founder of Awaecnan. We are a weight loss clinic, and we specialize in using clinical hypnotherapy for women over 35 and some men who want to stop dieting and lose weight naturally and really be around health focused. I don't want to go on about us because I really just want to get into this. Some people on the call might not know me, and so I just want to introduce myself. Who this webinar is for. This webinar is for those who are struggling with weight. Maybe you eat well, but you can't, spelling Jody, you can't lose weight. Maybe you seem to always be getting sick, or you're tired all the time, or you have no energy, you experience chronic illness. You're feeling like you've got stress in your body and you don't know why, or maybe you do know why. Your hormones are haywire. The overall feeling of being unwell. Maybe you experience anxiety or depression, IBS, food sensitivities, and so much more. Look, I want to really make sure that we are covering you in this web class. So in the Q&A, if there's something that's not on this list, and there's going to be a chance for you to ask questions about things that are specific to you, but in an overall sense, like what I've got on the screen, if that is missing, I want you to type it in the Q&A because I want to make sure that when we get to that, we have you covered, right? I want to definitely make this worth your while. And about our speakers, now let me just take this screen share off for a second. Cancel, stop share. All right, so I want to introduce you to our speakers. Like, why should you listen to them? So John Ellerman is a science graduate in microbiology and biochemistry. You give us a bit of a wave, John, so everyone knows who you are. From the University of Sydney and a member of Australian Society of Microbiology. He started dairy technology, which is now the University of Western Sydney, and worked as a dairy research microbiologist for the New South Wales Department of Agriculture. He worked as a microbiologist in Dairy Farmers Co-op Limited for 7 years before joining what became part of Burns, Phillip & Co. To conduct research into fermentation of dairy cultures, including probiotics. During the 90s, he served, we're telling your age now, during the 90s, he served on the advisory board of the Food Science Facility at the University of Western Sydney, Hawkesbury, and on the management committee of the government-funded Cooperative Research Centre, CRC, for food innovation at the University of New South Wales, which included scientists from DSM, led by John at Goodman Fielder, UNSW, and CSIRO Division of Dairy Research. The work that this team carried out led to the development of LAFTI. It's a range of probiotic cultures with the help of research with the CSIRO Division of Nutrition, to the elucidation of synergist interaction between these cultures and several, I'm probably butchering this, and several fiber ingredients which were shown to boost the numbers of probiotic culture cells to levels during the journey down the intestine that are unattainable by any other product. Amazing, right? Via this technology, the initial dose of 30 billion cells of Lactobacillus acridophyllus, I hope I'm saying this right, and bifidobacterium lactis are possibly boosted in the equivalent, taking more than trillion cells, thereby delivering unprecedented efficiency. So that's quite an amazing achievement and a feat, and all those words that I can't say. And with Jonathan Ellerman, which is John's son, John is a visionary founder or co-founder of ProGood, Probiotics and Prebiotics based in Australia. I actually take this product and it is incredible. His diverse career included roles in IT and recruitment and the alcohol industry, which really gives him this unique perspective on health and wellness. And Jonathan's transition into probiotics industry was driven by his passion for improving gut health. His previous role in the alcohol industry provided him with crucial insights into how alcohol can negatively impact the gut health and contribute to weight gain. This unique understanding has fueled his dedication to helping others restore their digestive health through the use of probiotics and prebiotics. And so when it comes to gut health, these guys are the GOAT. So welcome them here. Round of applause. So today, how this is going to go is they're going to information dump on you, right? So get out your notepads and pen, or as they're going along, I want you to type your questions in the Q&A section. When we started talking about this presentation for you and we were going through all the information, I just could not stop asking questions and just having these brief conversations about the topic. I learned so much, and I have been a student of gut health for probably 18 years when it was first introduced to me. And, you know, I've looked at everything that I possibly can since. I love the topic and I could talk about it forever. So when I tell you, even just those brief conversations that we had as we're setting this all up, I learned so much, and it really inspired me and excited me down the path of doing more, right? I feel like I was doing a lot, but I wasn't, right? So I want you to just sit back and chill, right? But pay attention to what's being said and take your notes, right? Write everything down, take your notes. If you don't have a notepad, type in the Q&A as you're going. And what we might do is, if I see you all fading off and falling asleep, we might stop and ask some questions to wake you up again, and then, you know, keep going. So, you know, I'm really grateful that you're both here tonight and giving our audience this opportunity to actually sit in front of you, because you never get this, right? You never get to sit in front of people that have the wealth of knowledge that you do and actually ask questions around things that you're experiencing and know that you've got somebody that knows what they're talking about on the other end. I don't know about other countries, but in Australia with free healthcare, you do tend to become a number because, you know, healthcare, you're kind of just pushed through, or even other countries too, I guess, because there's just so many people needing help. You really have to advocate for yourself to get answers, and to be able to sit in front of people like yourself is it's just never going to happen. So I really appreciate that you're here, and thank you so much for your time. Welcome, guys.
Okay. So
what I want to do is start with your presentation. Are you guys ready to go? Ready to pop it up on the screen?
I am going to share my screen. Tell me how this goes.
So, Super Revolution. It is a revolution. The reason I've called it Super Synbiotic, you've gone on to the next slide, John, is because a synbiotic is a combination of probiotics and prebiotics. Prebiotics being the fiber, it's a fancy name for fiber, that feeds the probiotics selectively and increases their number. And because we've got several prebiotics in there, then we're getting a boost on top of a boost. So we probably are getting something like a 400-fold increase in the numbers, which actually is quite revolutionary. And it pushes the numbers up into the level where we're actually having an impact on the gut, and that's important. Now, the next slide shows, if Jonathan will advance to the next slide, everything starts with the gut. Now, I'm quoting a doctor that I had for some time ago, but actually he's quoting the guy that is responsible for the Hippocratic Oath, and that's Hippocrates, who 2,400 years ago said everything, all disease comes from the gut. Or the next slide is, or more precisely, everything starts with the gut microbiome, or the bacteria in the gut. Okay, so we're talking about the gut microflora. And, you know, we've all got so many bacteria in our gut that if you, there's some debate about what proportion of our cells are actually bacterial, but if we take out the cells that don't produce anything, and that's your blood cells, which make up 60-something% of your body cells, then probably 90% of the cells in your body are bacteria. So that we're actually a composite organism, we're not one organism. So the next slide, Jonathan. It's quite a delay when you click on the next slide, Jonathan.
I know. I think it's a Zoho.
Right. So the government-funded cooperative research centre we've heard about, and we've talked about how it boosts the cells, the probiotic cells as they travel down the gastrointestinal tract. Next slide. Right. We talked about Lactobacillus acidophilus. It was a strain that I isolated many years ago, back in the 1980s, as a matter of fact, from a Japanese food, and it's particularly good for problems in the small intestine. The Bifidobacterium lactis strain is particularly good for problems in the large intestine. And when we use our normal basic product, which is 30 billion cells of those two strains per 5 gram dose, we find that the trehalose boosts the lactobacillus strain, the inulin and fibrate boost the bifidobacterium, and the prebiotics may provide up to a 200-fold boost to the probiotic cell numbers. And that's based on a conversation I had with a guy who's an expert in that field at CSIRO. They were doing pig experiments and found that with similar prebiotics they got in pigs a 50-fold boost, and he said that in humans it would probably be a 200-fold boost. So who knows what it is? We haven't tested it, but it's significant. Next slide. Effects of probiotics on growth of E. coli. This work was done, as you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, by the Department of Primary Industries, and they tested 49 different probiotics by growing each one in a tube and then spinning the cultures out and using what we call the supernatant liquid and adding that to a freshly inoculated E. coli broth and measuring what effect it had on the growth of that E. coli. And you can see there on the graph that the line at 0 is little good effect at all. And that's pretty well the dividing line between the red ones and the green ones. And you'll see that the cultures that we use as the basis for our product is showing the highest suppression pretty well of the bad bacteria. You'll also notice that about a third of the cultures are actually stimulating the bad bug, and that's certainly not what you want. But all those cultures are available on the market, and if you don't know exactly which strain that it is there, and I'm talking about at a level below what you can see from the name, then you don't know whether it's having a good effect or a bad effect on you. If you notice, for example, that our good one, Lactobacillus acidophilus, is one of the best, but if you look at the top of the right-hand column, there's a Lactobacillus acidophilus that's bad, and one below that also a Lactobacillus acidophilus, 4 down from that, 4 or 5 down. So you can't tell from the species name whether it's good or bad. You can only tell at the strain level, which isn't shown there. So the next slide.
Wait, hang a second, Dad. Can I just add to that, please?
I've got a question on this one too.
Yeah, Dad, just to sort of put that in perspective. So there's various Lactobacillus acidophilus strains on that chart. Some are suppressing the E. coli, and this E. coli actually killed a human being. So it's a very bad E. coli. The overall purpose of this graph is to show that not all probiotics are good for us. Some probiotics can actually increase the growth of bad bugs. So where you see green there with the bad effect, that's meaning some of those, like that, there's a rhamnosus there, for example, the bottom right-hand corner of that list, that's actually increasing the growth. It's a probiotic that's increasing the growth of this E. coli that's killed a human. But then you've got the Lactobacillus acidophilus that we use, for example, that has actually suppressed that bad bug, that E. coli, very nicely. So it's the purpose of this graph is to show not all probiotics are good for us. It's like you can have a Tom Smith, two Tom Smiths at a party. Tom Smith over in the left-hand corner is a murderer, but Tom Smith over in the right-hand corner is an aid worker, helping children in Africa. So you've got to kind of know their middle names. That's what Dad's talking about, is that, for example, the species, which is the Lafti L10. So it's the Lactobacillus acidophilus Lafti L10. So that's what differentiates the Lactobacillus acidophilus is that middle name or that species name. That's when you know that it could be a good bug or a bad bug. Oh, sorry, good probiotic or a bad probiotic. But sometimes in the market, a lot of probiotics brands don't specify this, and some of them don't know, really. They're just selling a probiotic. So you've got to kind of trust the manufacturers that they're actually supplying a probiotic that's that is a good probiotic. It's what we call efficacy in probiotics. So that's the whole, I guess, summary of the graph.
Thank you for that. And that blows my mind that there's products out on the market that you think that, because the purpose of taking a bloody probiotic and prebiotic is to improve your gut health, but there's ones out on the market that will actually make it worse. And then people are probably going, oh, but I'm doing all the things, right? And then why aren't I getting better? And because is it not regulated like health products?
Right. Well, I'll comment on that. The way that the whole field has developed over the years, originally these things were, there's a sort of a classification called GRAS in the legislation. And the legislation says that if a culture has been in the food supply for thousands of years, perhaps, you can get it in yogurt or salamis or kimchi or whatever, then it's generally regarded as safe, GRAS. And as long as you identify something as a Lactobacillus acidophilus or whatever, then that is grandfathered in under that legislation. In more recent years, we've come to realise that that's not enough, that we really need to distinguish these cultures at the strain level, not just the species level. So that's the history of it. And by the way, I know you can see Enterolive Maximal there in my website there, but we're doing this for Jonathan's brand.
Under the ProGood label, yeah. Yeah,
ProGood. So it's the same product. It's just ignore that website. You can go to progood.com.au to get the products, because eventually I'll retire and our Enterpro and the Enterolive brand won't be available anymore. So you might as well start on the ProGood brand. It's the same product anyway. Okay, next one, Jonathan. Okay, now there is a myth about probiotics that says you can replace the bugs that you've lost through antibiotics by taking probiotics. It is impossible to replace the good bacteria that have been wiped out by antibiotics with probiotics. We can, however, because most of the bugs that have been wiped out are not probiotics. They're good bugs, but not probiotics, and they can't be supplied because they're not GRAS. They haven't got that GRAS status. So they'd have all sorts of other names and may well be good in you, but you can't buy them. We can, however, reproduce the conditions that suppress bad bacteria, as we've shown, thereby reducing inflammation and allowing the damaged intestine to regenerate by administering probiotic cultures of proven efficacy, which are being boosted to very high levels by a packed lunch of prebiotic fibre ingredients and then continually topping them up on a daily basis. Now, the reason you have to top them up on a daily basis is because probiotics, believe it or not, are not good at competing against other bacteria in the gut in terms of staying there and growing to high levels. They actually don't compete well with iron requiring bacteria. In a breastfed baby, normally the numbers of bifidobacteria are very high because of lactoferrin chelates or locks up iron and takes it straight into the baby's blood, whereas the probiotics don't need iron, so they can proliferate and dominate in that breastfed baby's gut. But directly you wean that baby and lactoferrin's no longer there, then that whole population shifts and probiotics drop to perhaps 1 or 2%, which is not enough to do anything significant. So you have to keep topping them up. Next slide, Jonathan.
Actually, Dad, can I just add to that?
Yeah.
The thing is with the antibiotics is they kill off what's called commensal bacteria. It's bacteria that we're basically born with, we get from mum. So it's a part of our human microbiome. They're not outsiders coming in, they're sort of just from birth. So if we wipe them out with antibiotics, they're potentially never going to come back again. So unfortunately, antibiotics have got this lasting effect where they're killing off some commensal bacteria that aren't acidophilus strains, they're not probiotics, and we may never get them back. So, you know, the probiotics are there to suppress bad bacteria, and then unfortunately they pass on because the immune system kind of kicks them out as well. But that's why probiotics are also a daily thing.
Yeah.
So quick question on that. So when just on the iron as well. So some strains take more iron or help or don't take the iron. Just to clarify that, because I had an iron deficiency and had antibiotics as a child, and then had iron deficiency early teenagers, I would say, onwards. Would that be because of that?
Who knows? It could possibly be, because there are so many effects, side effects, ramifications of altering your gut microbiome that it could easily be. You know, I go back to that one of the first slides there. Everything starts with the gut, and actually with the gut microbiome. So it's quite possible that's the case. But the thing we need to know about breastfed babies and so on is that the lactoferrin actually chelates or reacts with the iron in the diet and locks it up and takes it straight into the bloodstream, thereby depriving the gut microbiome of iron. Now, your E. coli, your Clostridia, and all of those bugs, many of which are bad, require iron to compete well against probiotics. And as long as you've got that lactoferrin there, then you're modifying or maintaining a good environment for the probiotics, because they don't need iron. But directly the iron is available to the gut microbiome, then the probiotics lose the fight and fall to lower numbers. And that's why you have to keep topping them up on a daily basis, so that you've got a wave, if you like, of good bugs going down and suppressing the bad bugs on the way down. It's kind of like warfare. You've got the foxholes occupied by bad bugs down there. They're waiting for you to feed them. And as you feed them, they multiply into the food. And if you've got probiotics in your diet, then as that wave front of the high concentration of those probiotics moves down the intestine, it's stopping the bad bugs from eating that food and multiplying. So that's part of the way they suppress the bad bugs. But there's all sorts of other ways they do it as well, by stimulating the immune system to attack the bad bugs and so on. So anyway, next slide.
Just another quick question on that. So once you take the antibiotics and you've wiped out your generational microbiome, can you ever repair that? I mean, you might not ever get that back, but is there a world where you can be just as well and healthy as other people?
Okay. It's a good question, and it's a question that a lot of people have, because a lot of people are in that category because we've grown up with antibiotics. And the thing is, the immune system learned when in the first months of your life, hopefully if you were born vaginally, you shoveled up your mother's vaginal microbiome, which contains elements of the or representatives of her gut microbiome, because those two orifices are very close together. And then when that vaginal microbiome finds its way into the baby's gut, then that environment in the gut selects for the mother's gut bugs, and so that you end up with something like your mother's microbiome. The immune system and evolution, if you like, it makes the assumption that if your mother reached childbearing age, then the bugs that she supplied you with are good ones. Now, that can be good, or in this era of antibiotics, we created generations of deformed, if you like, and modified microbiomes. So the kids are being born with of mothers that have got modified microbiomes, and there's a lot of cesarean births, and their microbiome starts out by looking like a skin microbiome rather than a vaginal one. And so this is now thought to be the reason why there's so much autism around. It's because the autism is caused by spore-forming bacteria, Clostridia in particular the tetanus bug, Clostridium tetani, which has been enriched in mother's microbiome because the spores survive the antibiotics. And going down through the generations, we've ended up now with girls particularly that are giving birth to babies and passing on high levels of these neurotoxin producing bugs that are causing the autism. So, but that's off topic at the moment. We're supposed to be talking about weight loss and so on, but this is a very, very big topic. I could talk for hours on that. But anyway, hormones and the gut microbiome, if you've finished your question there, is that enough, Jody? Okay. Hormones, there's a two-way effect. The gut bugs talk to the immune system and the endocrine system that's producing all these hormones, and the hormones also have an effect on the bacteria. So it's a two-way street. Estrogens are lowered by antibiotics via dysbiosis. The dysbiosis is what you've already described. It's too many bad bugs in the gut and not enough good ones. And, we've all had antibiotics probably, and you end up with a different balance that maintains that balance ongoing. And the immune system, even if you were to try to put back some of those bugs, it's very difficult because the immune system recognizes them at the strain level, and it'll kick out anything that it wasn't programmed on in those few months of life. And that's why you can kick out a salmonella infection, for example. It doesn't take up residence permanently, usually. In rarer cases, it can. But the next point is the protection of androgens against type 1 diabetes is microbiome dependent. So there's bacteria in the gut that actually, if you've got them, can lead to type 1 diabetes. And type 1 diabetes is autoimmune. Autoimmune diseases are usually caused by a leaky gut and the bacteria getting into the blood. And the immune system makes antibodies to antigens on the surface or perhaps inside those bad bugs. And if those antigens resemble a structure in you, then suddenly those antibodies start attacking you. Type 1 diabetes sufferers have fewer bacteria producing butyrate. Now, butyrate's a 4-carbon thing. It's what you taste or smell when you've got rancid butter. Bifidobacteria produce butyrate, and butyrate's very important for the health of the intestinal wall because the cells can't get butyrate from the bloodstream. They can only get it from the bacteria that are producing it in the gut. So that's why it's important to have bifidobacteria. It's one of the reasons. There's probably another 100 reasons, but anyway. Now, the efficacy of cyclophosphamide versus ovarian cancer, for example, is related to some species of gut bacteria. So whether they metabolize that drug or how it works, we're not sure. But we do know, for example, that there was an experiment with mice that had been given cancer. They'd been given melanoma, and when the scientists fed them a high salt diet, 4% sodium chloride, which made their gut leak deliberately, and bifidobacteria translocated into the bloodstream, found the cancer cells, the tumours, and whistled up the natural killer cells from the immune system and cured the mice of cancer. So, you know, this has tremendous implications. Now, the next thing, postmenopausal osteoporosis is reduced if Lactobacillus acidophilus and some other bacteria are present. Polycystic ovaries can be related to reduced diversity in the gut. And there's an article there that you can have a look at, the influence of gut microbiome on host metabolism through the regulation of gut hormone release. It's very heavy paper, scientific paper, but so I'm not going to try and go through it. You can have a look at it if you like. Next slide, Jonathan.
I think that just to add to that, you know, so many neurotransmitters and various hormones, I mean, so much that is produced with the gut as well, or from the gut microbiome. And then obviously things from the gut can travel up through the vagus nerve to the brain or through the blood-brain barrier. So obviously they translocate into the bloodstream and then through the blood-brain barrier. So much that's produced in the gut affects so many parts of our bodies, like hormones, neurotransmitters, a whole bunch of different things. So,
yeah, and I think with our modern diets and medicines, not only antibiotics but other drugs, we've done so much damage to our microbiome that it's no wonder we've got a plethora of disorders that we're suffering from. Okay, Jonathan, next.
And I don't know, and just to add to that, it's like antibiotics have saved millions of lives. There's no doubt about that. They've cleared hospitals out. But it's the overuse of them. You know, you look at hunter-gatherer tribes in Africa that have never touched antibiotics in their life, and they've got 1,700 different species living in their gut, in their microbiome, whereas in westernized societies where we've sort of generationally, like Dave was talking about, you know, mum passing down her microbiome generationally, is that we're seeing now in westernized societies that have used antibiotics, we're actually having depleted microbiome. So we might only have 700-800 different species opposed to the 1,700 different species of Amazonians or Africans. So, you know, some of these African and Amazonian tribes have got, you know, ability to produce antibiotic resist, you know, to various diseases and things. So it's phenomenal how, like, we have depleted our microbiomes, but absolutely antibiotics are essential in cases. You know, they're just overused, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, with me, for example, 20 odd years ago, I had a Giardia infection. Now that's a protozoan parasite, and I was treated with Flagyl, which is metronidazole, and it got rid of that parasite, but left me with collateral damage and IBS. So anyway, the weight problems. Okay, this is what you were wanting to hear about. And gut bacteria influence how different foods are digested. So you can actually get more or less energy out of your food depending on what bacteria you have in your gut. And you've only got to have a 5% difference. And you're putting on 5% more weight today and 5% more tomorrow and 5% more after that. And before you know it, you're 100% heavier than you should be. So overweight people have less gut bacterial diversity. Now, it's very difficult to replace the ones that are lost. The appendix, which for many generations was supposed to be a redundant organism, actually functioned as a reservoir for all the bugs in the gut, so that when they got wiped out by, say, a food poisoning case, dysentery or something like that, then the appendix would replenish that microbiome. And so people who have had their appendix removed are 5 times more likely to have these sorts of problems because they're not able to replenish them. Okay, so bifidobacteria help stop inflammatory chemicals from entering the bloodstream, for example, because the bifidobacteria help reline the intestine with that mucus layer that's so important. The hormone peptide YY, whatever that is, reduces food intake and increases energy. Different bacteria affect the levels of PYY. So there again, different bacteria will affect how your body metabolizes food, and propionate produced by bifidobacteria reduces weight gain. So it's, I can't say that you're going to be skinny if you take ProGood. That would be ridiculous because there are so many factors that contribute to it. But it is a factor and that may help if you also have a sensible diet. Now, gut microbiome diversity and a high fibre intake are related to lower long-term weight gain. Okay, so that's basically where we come in. And you can use that reference to look up articles on that subject if you want to. Next slide, Jonathan.
I will, when we share this session online, I will post the links to all those links that you've got. I'll post them in the description of the video.
Good. Okay. Well, this diagram, which we found on the internet, it shows the cycle of diet affecting the microbiota, and the microbiota affecting the production of all these compounds that affect the hormone productions, which in turn affect your metabolism, and it goes around in that circle. But the important thing is that the bacteria in your gut are dictating a lot about how much weight you put on and how your whole body functions. So from, as you see that box on the right there, fat storage, for example, is affected by that, and whether you feel hungry or not is related to the production of hormones that are affected by the bacteria in your gut. Next slide, John.
No, Dad, I think just add to that, like maybe you should talk about the mouse study where they did the FMT with the mice.
Oh, yes, okay, we can do that. Yeah, there's a strain of mouse that is overweight, and they took poo from that mouse and put it inside a mouse that was skinny, and the skinny mice became fat. And they can do the opposite. They can exchange the microflora from the skinny mouse, and it'll make the fat one skinny. It's a little bit challenging. You know, this is called FMT, or fecal matter transplant, and it's now become very popular because it's been shown that people who have had a lot of antibiotics and their gut microbiome has been taken over by a particular Clostridium. It's called Clostridium difficile, which is the French for difficult, because it's difficult to get rid of. They end up dying in their hundreds of thousands a year from what's called bloody diarrhea. Their intestines just disintegrate. And it's been shown that if you take poo, which is just basically a collection of all the bugs in a healthy person's gut, because you obviously take it from a healthy person, and put it, and in crude terms, shove it up the bum of the sick person, it cures them. And it's been shown that this can cure a lot of conditions. But of course, we've then got that issue of your your immune system kicking out eventually bugs that it doesn't recognize as part of your first group that it was programmed on. And so a lot of these FMTs only last, say, a month and then break down, and the person goes back to where they were and has to have another FMT. It's more successful if it's done from a first order relative, because they're most likely to have their immune systems have been programmed on that initial good set from mum. So get some from a healthy sister or brother, and it's more likely to take root in your gut, that sort of thing. But
well, healthy mother would be the ideal donor, wouldn't it? Is it for an FMT for a sick person or a sick child?
Would be. Yeah.
So I can't order up some from an 18-year-old female and reverse my aging.
Oh, that's not as silly as it sounds, actually.
Oh, really?
Well, blood transfusions from young people tend to have a rejuvenating effect on the recipient. It does have some age-reversing effects. So maybe an FMT from a young person may well do that, because as long as the bugs are able to be accepted long-term, then that's going to be good for you. You know, the overall picture that we're trying to project here is that if you've got a collection of basically more bad bugs than good bugs, it's going to have a whole range of detrimental effects on you. And look, I mean, Parkinson's disease, we all saw it on the television. I knew it from the science some time back, but the University of Helsinki found that Alzheimer's sufferers have a particular bug called a strain of desulfovibrio bug in their gut, and that's what's causing the Alzheimer's. So a whole lot of diseases we're going to find are caused by particular bugs. You know, it's going to be it's an amazing area of research. All sorts of breakthroughs are occurring all the time. Okay, the next slide, Jonathan. We're going to take too long if we don't move along. Count to 10, here it is. Right, stress, anxiety and depression. There's you can have a look at that reference there. Serotonin is often low in depression. Probiotics increase serotonin levels by increasing tryptophan levels. That's a precursor of serotonin. It's also important, if you suffer from depression, to take B group vitamins. B6 increases serotonin levels by actually, the way it works is the enzyme that adds a small molecule to the tryptophan to convert it into serotonin needs a vitamin stuck to it. And actually, it's probably B1 increases serotonin. B6 increases, I think, the dopamine, because dihydroxyphenylalanine, when you stick an amine group on it to make the other neurotransmitter dopamine, it needs B6. So B1 and B6 are important anyway. Gamma-aminobutyric acid is often low in anxiety, and GABA is a neurotransmitter that actually moderates the excitatory effects of serotonin and dopamine. And you can consume GABA, but it doesn't actually normally pass through the blood-brain barrier, but the components that are produced by lactobacilli and bifidobacteria can pass through the brain-blood barrier or blood-brain barrier and can be assembled by brain cells, and that can reduce the anxiety. And in fact, I've seen the effect of our product on anxiety. It certainly reduces it in people that I've given it to. So probiotics stop increases in norepinephrine during stress. So these are all well-known things. So you can go onto that website and have a look at those things. Jonathan? count to 10. But the small intestine, it should be populated, that's the bit after the stomach, by the way, between that and the colon. It should be populated by bacteria that are like yogurt cultures. These are mainly streptococci and lactobacilli. These don't produce gas. They're only weakly protein splitting or digesting. They suppress bad bacteria but are extremely sensitive to antibiotics. In fact, when I was a young microbiologist at dairy farmers, we used to use Streptococcus thermophilus to test farmers' milk for the presence of antibiotics. When we take antibiotics, we risk totally wiping them out. The most obvious conditions that are related to bad microorganisms, dysbiosis, causing diarrhea and constipation, bloating and gas. Interestingly, diarrhea and constipation are both caused by bad bugs. Diarrhea can be caused by irritation caused by bad bugs, causing the pumping of water in to flush it out. And so that's what causes the diarrhea. And it can also impact on the water recycling from the slurry that your food is when it hits the large intestine, the colon. There's a water reclamation process that goes on. And if that's disrupted, you can get diarrhea. Constipation is caused usually by too many bad bugs producing neurotoxins. I read one paper a long time ago where it said that constipated patients in this trial had 200 times the normal level of E. coli and Clostridia, which are notorious for producing neurotoxins, which paralyze the nerves in the bowel and stop that rhythmic contraction, the peristalsis, that works the food down. Now, just as an anecdote, for example, the IBS that I have, or could have, if I wasn't taking our formula, I had to develop our formula to treat that and keep me normal, which it does. Now, yesterday, I was in a meeting with some other guys in our church, and one of them's a pastor in our church, and he said that he was on heart medication, and he said that he got so constipated and he couldn't fix it at all. He had 4 enemas that didn't work. He had all the normal things that doctors give you for constipation, and he decided to hit our product hard and had 2 doses in the morning and 2 doses in the evening. He said it fixed me. So that would be presumably because it's suppressing the bad bugs that are causing the problem. Now, bloating and gas, that's caused when you have bugs producing gas that's too low down to burp out. And when you take antibiotics and wipe out those good yogurt type bacteria in the small intestine, oral bacteria come down and take up residence there. And if they're gas producers, then that's what causes the bloating. So when you feed them food that they like, then they produce gas that's too low down to burp out because it's below the stomach. And that's what causes the bloating, the stretching of the intestine. That's all, it's gas, of course. Also, if you're producing gas out the exhaust pipe in excess, well, there's all sorts of bacteria that do that. And as I say, if you commit the ultimate social faux pas in a crowded lift, all you have to say is, don't blame me, I can't help it if all my intestinal microbes want to breathe out at the same time. So next slide, Jonathan.
Sorry, just quickly on that. I love your analogy. So basically, when I'm eating something like white bread, my body hates white bread. And my stomach just goes like that. It's so painful. It's because the bad bugs that are in my intestines love the white bread, and they feed on it, and they're all farting in my intestines, basically.
that's certainly part of it, a big part of it. I was talking to Professor Tom Barodi once, and he said also, if you've developed a sensitivity to a particular food, and it could be gluten that you're reacting to, he said directly it hits the stomach, then there's about 20 chemical signals that get produced and passed down the intestine, basically saying, look out, here it comes. You know, and so you react to that as well. So it's a complex situation. But yeah, a lot of it, particularly with the gas and the pain and the stretching, that's because the bugs that you are feeding with that are producing carbon dioxide. Yeah.
A lot of burping, a lot of farting or occasional burp, it doesn't necessarily mean sickness or bad bugs as such, but they can obviously mean that as well.
Well, bifidobacteria produce carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
And as long as you're not worried about the global warming, then don't worry about producing some carbon dioxide out the exhaust pipe. But anyway, this damage to the intestine, you can see here on the left, normal healthy villi, which are those finger-like projections. They're only one cell thick, the wall of it, but that's what divides the intestinal lumen, which is above that slide, if you like, from the bloodstream, which is below all those villi. Now, on the left there, this is more magnified, by the way. All the villi have been chewed off, and those things that look like finger-like projections are actually the more magnified versions of the ones on the left. Okay, but the villi have all been chewed off, and that's usually ends up being diagnosed as celiac, but it's because the gut leaks, and normal the genetically determined celiac is because they have genes that produce too much zonulin, which controls the tight junctions that you can see between those cells on the left. All those little cells, they open up to let stuff through, and they end up with too much gluten going through into their blood. But the one on the right is because bacteria have damaged the wall of the intestine, and it leaks, and you end up with the same effect of gluten and gliadin going through into the bloodstream and getting an immune response to it. Again, it's probably even more complex than I'm making it sound, but basically the one on the right can be reversed if you suppress the bad bugs and allow the healing process to predominate. Then you'll grow back those villi and heal the gut. So that's important to know, that you can actually reverse that type of celiac with probiotics that are effective. Nutrient absorption, the gut has an enormous surface area with all those villi. If you look at all the surface area of that, for the absorption of vitamins and minerals, the villi and the microvilli, which are small villi on the surface of the villi, are only one cell thick and vulnerable to damage by probiotic bacteria. So obviously, if those oral bacteria that have made it down to the gut were able to take over down there and attack the proteinaceous wall of the intestine, they can make it, they can damage it and make it leak. Now, reduction in surface area through bacterial damage leads to vitamin and mineral deficiencies with obvious implications for overall health. It's interesting that people who look at the history of important historical figures, one of them determined that Captain James Cook probably had an overgrowth of protozoan parasites that so damaged his gut that he couldn't absorb vitamins and minerals, and he went crazy and was killed because he was flogging his men mercilessly for nothing at all. And when he was offending the natives in Hawaii, his men just retreated and let him be killed by the natives there. So if he'd had ProGood, he probably would still be alive. No, not quite.
Well, I think it's important to add there, Dad, is that probiotics are not necessarily good against parasites because they're larger organisms. A lot of people, if we see people that don't get the results they want out of the probiotics, we generally say get checked for a parasite. And we've had a few amazing stories around people having parasites and getting checked for them, like finding out they've got nodules in their stomach that is actually cancerous. So yeah, it's a general thing. If the probiotics aren't working, there could be signs of parasites.
Yeah, that's a good point.
What's a sign that the probiotics aren't working?
Well, all right. I had one doctor who was using our product, and he said that before he started using our basic formula, he had brain fog, and he was hitting the wall when he exercised. I'm sure you all know what that means. He's running out of energy. And on our standard product, he found that the brain fog lifted and the wall moved further away, but he still wasn't perfect. I recommended our Plus product to him, and he said the wall moved even further away on that, but it wasn't enough to say that he was fixed. And I said, I think you've got a protozoan parasite. He went away and got tested and came back and said, yes, I've got Dientamoeba fragilis, which is a protozoan like an amoeba. So incidentally, he also said that when they looked at him, they found then that he had, what's the blood cancer? Yeah, anyway, and they had to work on that. But so it was just as well we sent him away to get tested, because that's saved his life. But anyway, that's nothing to do with the probiotics per se. But anyway, next.
Yeah, but sorry, just to add to that, when it doesn't work, it means it's not working. It probably is, the probiotics are working for what they're supposed to do, but there could be something else that's putting up that barrier, like a parasite. So the probiotics might be doing what they're supposed to do, is suppressing bad bugs, but it's not going to suppress a parasite that might be fueling one of the key reasons things aren't working properly in that, that human. So
I regard protozoan parasites, which are of course cells that are probably 10 times the diameter of a bacterial cell. I regard them as like bad bacteria on steroids, and they're much harder to suppress. Now, I was actually in charge of research at a company that was manufacturing these probiotic cultures, and when I had this Giardia infection, and I could actually switch off the explosive diarrhea by taking high doses, much higher doses than you could produce commercially, of these probiotics, and was able to tell the doctor, I think I've got a bad bug there that's doing it, because I can suppress it with these cultures. But if I stopped taking the cultures on the weekend, 2 days later, by Monday, I had the explosive diarrhea back again. And it took then 2 days to switch that off again. But so they do work against it, but you have to have really, really high doses. And anyway, I got treated with the flagell, which then killed it, but also did other damage to me. And our product was then able to cope, or at least those cultures were able at much lower doses to cope with the bacterial dysbiosis. But they didn't cope well at lower doses when the protozoan parasite was causing problems. Anyway, SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. If you've taken an antibiotic and killed off all those yogurt-like bacteria, other bacteria from the mouth usually come down and fill the vacuum. These produce gas, which leads to bloating and gastric reflux. So this is a summation of what I've just all said. They are often proteolytic and damage the villi, leading to leaky gut syndrome, which is responsible for food sensitivities when large food molecules translocate into the bloodstream, and autoimmune diseases, as I explained, when particularly bacteria translocate with their particular antigens that might resemble antigens in you. And things like ankylosing spondylitis, which is an arthritis of the spine, for example. It's been associated with a couple of strains of bacteria, one called Klebsiella, another called Yersinia, that are coliform type bacteria that are obviously getting into the blood. And so there's, you know, a friend, a client of ours, actually, she's 92 and said that she had such bad swollen hands from arthritis, and our product had rendered her hands almost normal again. So yeah, it works against that by reducing the inflammation, as well as, and by the way, it reduces the inflammation by pushing bad bugs off the receptors for the immune system in the small intestine particularly. And when there's bad bugs on the Peyer's patches, the immune system says, oh, I've got to produce inflammation. It's like when you have a cut and it's healing and it goes red around it. But when you put good bugs down there, the immune system says, oh, now looking through into the intestine, I can see all is well. I don't need to produce inflammation. And inflammation is a part of a whole range of diseases. Now, other conditions connected with dysbiosis, you've got bowel cancer, obviously, liver cancer, obesity, inflammatory bowel disease, Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, that is. And when we talk about Crohn's, I know that we had a friend at church who was, she'd had such bad Crohn's that she'd had 4 major resections of her bowel. She was in and out of hospital all the time. And the doctors said, look, we can't hold it. You'll have to go to Liverpool Hospital, and they will prescribe drugs that they'll import from America, and stay off the old drugs for 3 weeks before going on the new ones. And during that period, she just took a dose of our product in the morning, our standard 30 billion 2-strain product, and a dose in the evening. She said at the end of that 3 weeks, she felt so good, she never started the new drugs. And the first colonoscopy she had after that, the doctor said, what are you doing? Because your ulcers have all shrunk and the joints in your intestine, instead of being inflamed and swollen, are all healthy and pink and open, and, you know, not restricting the intestine. And she told them, and they said, well, keep doing it. And so she kept doing it, and every time she had a colonoscopy after that, and she'd never had to go back to hospital again, she got better and better, and eventually they said, you've got no Crohn's in your body. And so she was out of hospital for 9 years. She died of an unrelated condition later, but it had nothing to do with the Crohn's or the probiotics. But moving on, well, there's another guy who's ulcerative colitis with bleeding from the bowel, and he's taking our product, and the same doctor said to him, keep doing it because we know that product. And so he is, and has no problems. Insulin resistance, type 1 and type 2 diabetes, they're all related and connected to gut dysbiosis. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, because normally it's the alcohol that damages the liver when people are alcoholics. But if they've got bad bugs producing compounds that do the same thing, they end up with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Food allergies can be related to that, bad bugs. There's a relationship between particular type of bacteria and allergies to particular types of foods. Maybe it's the bacteria that are triggering the reaction that then happens against the food because there's some similarity involved there, who knows. Non-effectiveness of statins, lowering your blood pressure with statins. People who have not been effectively treated with statins have often got bad bugs that are causing the problem. And arterial plaque and heart disease, well, heart disease is an infection. The top 3 bacteria that cause heart disease are oral bacteria. The top one, number 1 baddie in this is the gingivitis bug. So other conditions continued: inflammation, fibromyalgia, acne, depression, anxiety, obesity, obsessive compulsive disorder. All these things can be related to bugs in the gut. autism and Asperger's syndrome. That's likely to be caused by bad bacteria producing neurotoxins. Alzheimer's disease, well, there is a gut connection there. Interestingly, I heard some doctors say that people who've got high cholesterol don't get Alzheimer's disease because cholesterol is important for the brain cell function. Multiple sclerosis, suppressed immunity, all these things are connected to dysbiosis, bad gut bugs. All right, John.
We've also got a couple of questions. Why are there two strengths? Would you recommend starting with Pro Good versus the Pro Good Plus? But also, can you take Pro Good if you're already on meds for ulcerative colitis?
You can. Yeah. Look, the Plus product, I find for my condition, 2 doses a day of the Plus is equivalent to 3 doses a day of the standard product. So both are good, but probably the Plus product is usually more for treating specific conditions and is more economic to use because you get, for an extra few dollars, you get a much higher count. From 30 billion, it goes
20 billion or something, isn't it more? 20,
Yes,
50 billion? Yeah.
50 billion.
Could you go on the Plus to start with and then maybe go down to the other one once you start feeling better?
It's always an experiment, and it may be, as it was with the Crohn's sufferer, a friend of ours, that the standard product's enough. But everybody's different. Everybody's requirements are different. The lady who had the bad arthritis in her hands, swollen hands, said that she got away with half a dose a day of the Plus product, but it took longer to act than if she'd taken 1 or 2 doses a day, so it's all an experiment, and you need to try, suck it and see, as I always say.
I always say, you start on the Plus product, absolutely, because it's got 4 strains plus the prebiotic boosters. So, and then if your things are getting out of control, then absolutely drop down to the 30 billion. Because the 30 billion is just the 2 strains plus the prebiotics. The 50 billion's got 4 strains, so we've added a rhamnosus and a Boulardii, which is a yeast or a yeast probiotic. And they're getting boosted by the prebiotic fibers, obviously, in the 50 billion plus product as well. So I generally, if you've got conditions, you think, then that you really want to hit hard, go the Plus product, and then you can pull back to the 30 billion green jar or the original formula.
Okay, so this is a schematic. The photograph on the left, the electron photomicrograph, shows end on the villi, and then the bigger domes in between are the Peyer's patches. And they're the immune receptors, the immune system receptors. And bacteria stick to those, as I said, and cause the patch to release cells, which produce a range of immune active molecules. Bad bacteria cause the production of pro-inflammatory cytokines, which increase inflammation, of course. Good bacteria cause the production of anti-inflammatory cytokines and reduce inflammation. Much of the overweight situation is due to inflammation or connected with inflammation. So that could be very significant to treating that. Okay, next slide. Asthma, hay fever, eczema. Interestingly, I was born in England, came out on the ship as an 8-year-old, had vaccine fever on the ship, and they pumped me full of antibiotics, which was penicillin. And by the time I landed in Australia, I was an asthmatic and I had hay fever. You have a genetic predisposition probably to that, and exacerbated by bad bacteria on the Peyer's patches, and it's greatly improved by replacing the above with good bacteria. Autoimmune eczema may take longer to improve, but we've had many accounts of improvements with those. I mean, I had the hay fever, allergic to dust mites. I'd have to leave the house if my wife vacuumed. Now, I can vacuum the whole house and it doesn't affect me at all while I'm on the product. So, but don't tell my wife, whatever you do. Okay, chronic fatigue. that can be caused by nutrient deficiency, for example. I had terrible chronic fatigue, and one day my wife gave me an FGF tablet, telling me it was an iron tablet. And I said, well, iron doesn't do anything to me. I'm a blood donor and I take iron tablets and it does nothing. 3 days later, boing, fantastic. What's in that? Oh, it's folic acid and iron. Okay, it's the folic acid. Now, I found that taking now for the last probably 40 years, 5 milligrams of folic acid a day, I don't get chronic fatigue at all. But I was so fatigued I couldn't even get out of my chair in the office or the lab at Dairy Farmers to find, to get to my filing cabinet. Terrible. I was falling asleep all the time. Dreadful.
This is what I'm experiencing, and it's not as bad as what it was. I couldn't even get up off the couch or work or do anything. Yeah. And, I have moments where it's really bad, where I feel like it is right now. But it's like every single thing that all these slides and the things that you're talking about, and I'm like, yeah, but like it feels like all of the things I'm experiencing, it's like it all makes sense, right? So having antibiotics from a child, and then every so often, every few years, I guess, up until adulthood, I don't think my body's ever had a chance to heal from any of that, and then replace the microbiome or anything like that moving along. So yeah.
It's so common, and you may have a nutrient deficiency like that, like I did. It may not be that. It may be toxins from dysbiosis. Bad bacteria produce toxins which can make you feel chronically fatigued. It can be the Epstein-Barr virus from glandular fever. A lot of people have that virus in their system. And Professor Clancy, who's an immunologist, did work with that Lactobacillus acidophilus strain that I isolated back in the 80s. And he found that he could reverse chronic fatigue in overtrained athletes. And you can Google that paper and read it for yourself, the reversal of chronic fatigue in overtrained athletes by the administration of a probiotic, I think it's the title. And it certainly works. Corticosteroids lowered resistance due to suppression of the immune system. Yeah, well, that doctors so often, and you can understand why, and I'm not against doctors by any means, there's this relationship that because penicillin, when it was invented, emptied hospital wards, now the whole medical profession tends to reach for drugs to do things, and the corticosteroids can suppress the inflammatory part of the immune system. The trouble is that also suppressing the resistance to infection part of the immune system, and so it's treating the symptoms only and not the cause. So what we're interested in here is treating the cause, which is usually bad bugs in the gut. Okay, next. Right, tips for using a super synbiotic like ProGood. You can use it as a preventative versus a treatment. That's fine, and I'd probably recommend that you just use the 30 billion one, but if you're just using it if you're healthy, but you just want to add something to your diet, versus the treatment where, as Jonathan said, start on the plus product and see how you go. Children and babies, we don't recommend using the whole formula on babies that haven't been weaned. So we set a limit of 1 year on that, mostly because if they're not weaned, their gut is not used to fibre and it'll constipate them, the fibre in our product. So if you want to treat a baby, then the easy way to do it and the safe way to do it is to get our dual sachet product, where we actually separate the probiotics from the fibre and the boosters, as they're called. And you can actually feed the baby as much as you like of the culture side. knowing that in a normal healthy baby, the vast overwhelming majority of cells in their gut are going to be probiotics. So if the baby hasn't got that, then it's safe certainly to give them the probiotic side, but not the jar. Don't buy the jar version and give it to a baby unless the baby's weaned. Now the healing and also how to give it to them prorated on a weight basis. So if as an adult your dose is going to be somewhere between half a dose and 3 doses a day, well, somewhere in that range would be, divide the baby's weight by your weight, not the other way around, and work out how many times you weigh compared to the baby and divide the dose by that. In other words, prorated on a weight basis. The healing crisis and how to handle it. Well, some people, particularly if they have a lot of food sensitivities, might have an apparent negative reaction to the Super Synbiotic. And when that happens, back off and start with very low doses again and build up gradually. So how can we improve outcomes? In extreme cases, individuals may require the removal of their bowel bacteria and replacement with those from a healthy person. We've talked about that by the fecal enema. Some people may need treatment to remove parasites like I did, but most will benefit from taking very effective strains of probiotics boosted to high levels with carefully selected prebiotics.
That's it.
That's it. That's the last slide. So if there are any other questions, I'm quite happy to.
Yes, there is. So how is fasting influencing microbiome health?
Fasting?
From Damien.
Okay. Yeah, fasting. So, well, anything that you do will affect the microbiome. So fasting will starve the cultures down there. And fasting has been found to be as effective as chemo against cancer, depending on how long you fast. But if you fast too long, you risk the bacteria starting to eat you rather than if you're not feeding them. So they can attack the lining of your intestine and do you damage if you fast for weeks. But fasting for a few days, of course, is probably very beneficial. Anyway.
If you're taking a prebiotic, would it transfer through breast milk?
Look, the breast milk has a certain microflora in it, and various things will transmit through breast milk, as we know. The scary thing that's just recently been discovered is that the spike protein from the vaccines is going through the breast milk if the mother was vaccinated, and it's killing off the bifidobacteria in the baby's gut, and they end up with 0 bifidos in their gut, which is highly dangerous and damaging. But I recommend that if you're going to give the probiotics to a baby, you can just use the culture side of our sachet product, and you can just put a little bit on the finger and stick it in the baby's mouth. That's fine. That's the way I would do it. But there's also a microbiome associated with the nipple, of course, and babies, when they're suckling, are picking up those bacteria, which hopefully are good. And who knows what we've done with antibiotics to mothers' nipple microbiome. It's a worry.
So we've got a couple of questions on Facebook. So one was talk about methane SIBO, but I think you already talked about SIBO. Is it methane SIBO? Is it different or the same thing?
Well, so a lot of different people have got different microbiomes producing different compounds, and there's the old thing about can you light your flatulence, and but a lot of that combustible flatulence is due to hydrogen production rather than methane. But, you know, there are methanobacteria in the gut of some individuals, probably quite a lot of individuals, and that would contribute to the combustibility of flatulence. Yeah, for sure. And that's the methanobacterium, but a lot of it is hydrogen. Yeah.
And so again, taking a probiotic, prebiotic is going to help somebody that's got SIBO.
Well, you know, SIBO is because there's damage. Now, a lot of people will say don't take the polysaccharide stuff, you know. You're not allowed to have, what do they call it when you go on one of those diets?
Keto or something.
Yeah, I've forgot the name of it right now, but low carbohydrate type diets, you know, and
keto or paleo.
Yeah, those sorts of things. Anyway, the problem with, you know, those carbohydrates and things is that they're feeding the bad bugs. Now, some people will say, hang on, your product has got those in, those are the boosters that are in there, and I'm not allowed to eat those. Well, the fact is that if we're using those to boost the cultures that will suppress those bad bugs, then ultimately the good bugs will win. But there may be this may be a phenomenon that is accounting for this negative reaction to probiotics. Could be due to some of it to prebiotics feeding the bad bugs temporarily until the good bugs get on top of them. Who knows? It's so complex what happens down in the gut that it's very hard to know exactly what's happening.
Can bad bacteria in the gut make us crave certain foods or create like a food addiction or a sugar kind of addiction?
Yes, definitely. Because it's very interesting. In nature, there are many examples of parasites, for example, causing their host to do things that they want them to do. For example, there are parasites that spend half their life cycle in birds and half their life cycle in either fish or snails. And when they get into the fish or the snail, they make the fish swim up to the surface to make it more vulnerable to being preyed upon by the bird. Or if it's in a snail, they make them crawl up the grass and make themselves more visible that way. And so that bug is passed on to the next stage of the life cycle, the next host. And there are similar things that happen in humans. People who have cats can become infected by a particular protozoan parasite, and in women it makes them more careful of their appearance, and in men it has the opposite effect. So I think I've got that one. Anyway, I'll blame the cats that my daughter wanted me to have. Anyway, there's lots of examples of that, and definitely the bugs have ways of manipulating the host that they're in, and they can produce pseudoleptins, for example, which make you hungry and make you want to eat, because, you know, these compounds resemble the leptins that you produce naturally. But the bug is doing it so that you're going to eat their favorite food, and they can then compete more effectively against the other bugs in that environment. It's all very
makes sense, right?
Yeah,
it's alien versus predator in there.
Yeah. Well, you know, it gives us all a great excuse for overeating. I think if you've got, you know,
not me, it's my bad bugs.
Yeah, that's right. It's not my fault that I wanted to eat that chocolate.
I think the gut-brain relationship is so complex, through the vagus nerve, which is, it's sort of it means the wandering nerve. It connects our brain with all our organs and, helps the movement, heartbeats and peristalsis of the gut. And for example, when you got to get nervous, if you've got to do a talk in front of 1,000 people, you get nervous in your head, but you actually get butterflies in your stomach. These two are connected and talking to each other all the time. The gut's producing things for the brain. Stress can affect the gut, so external stress can, that we get through our eyes and ears can also affect our gut. So these two are, working together as a team to, control so many things of our body, within our body. It's crazy. It's just, we're complex organisms, us humans.
Yeah, we are. Another question is why are your products superior to natural fermented foods like kimchi and natural yogurt, not industrial with a few strains that has a whole spectrum of bacteria?
Yes. Look, the probiotics that we all use today have come from those natural sources initially. That's where they've been isolated. But bear in mind that slide I showed you where a third of them actually stimulated the bad bugs. When you eat some of these fermented foods, you don't know what particular strains are in it. And what we particularly have done in the research that I was involved in is we've looked at all those types of strains and picked the best ones at doing the job that we want them to do. Now, if you eat a lot of kimchi and it happens to have the right bugs in it, then it'll be good. There's no doubt about that. But if it has the wrong bugs, it'll be bad for you, So how do you know? You really need to rely on someone like, us, if you like, to have selected the probiotic strains that do the right thing and not the wrong thing. So that's all I can say about that. But anyway.
Another question is,
if it works for you, stick to it.
No, you go.
That's what we say. If something works for you, stick to it. Your body will tell you, and you'll feel it. Body tells you if something's good for you, not because you're either feeling crap or you're feeling great.
Yeah, I'm a great believer in that. If you've got fermented food that keeps you healthy, keep eating it.
So due to the amount that you need per dose that don't have it in pill form, it's really, Satina, it's not that much when you, like I put it in, I take the immunity one as well, and it's just like a tablespoon or like a little tablespoon you put in water. So like I have that bottle of water and I put it in that. And it's I don't know, I just found that a little bit easier than having a tablet. It's got usually has coating or something like on it, and those ones all give me heartburn. But I'll leave that question to you guys about it not being a tablet rather than powder.
Well, if we're talking probiotics and you swallow a tablet or a capsule, the cultures have to rehydrate because they're freeze-dried. They have to rehydrate in stomach acid, which is concentrated hydrochloric acid and kills most of the cells. That's why we prefer a powder that is dissolved and rehydrated in water, and then those cells don't need to suck in the acid. So you get a much higher survival rate, presumably. We've never measured it, but from the effect we're seeing, it must be working. Yeah, that's important. And also, you can't fit enough prebiotic in a capsule to make any difference. If you've got a capsule that says, oh, there's fructooligosaccharides in this capsule, a capsule can only contain a fraction of a gram, and it takes multiple grams to do anything. So, yeah, it's only there as advertising. It's not doing anything.
I tend to have packers and stuff included in tablets, right, to put it in that form. And so, how much are you really getting? That's right. Any tablet that you're taking, right? That's not probiotics, it's anything that you're taking.
It depends, because, if the tablet contains vitamins or something like that, that's not going to be a problem. I mean, I take vitamin tablets, and that's no problem at all. But there's not much point taking probiotics in capsule form. It's just not a good idea. See, the prebiotics also act like a preservative. There's electron photomicrographs of cells, probiotic cells, stuck to the prebiotic fiber granules, and that's actually carrying them through the stomach acid and the bile in the small intestine and protecting them somewhat. So that's another reason why we do what we do.
Now, there's a question about, oh, sorry.
That's why Professor Clancy has described our product as the best in the world. And he's an immunologist working these days with Professor Barodi at the Centre for Digestive Diseases here in Sydney. Yeah.
There's
Anyway.
a question about low FODMAP, but it just says low FODMAP question mark. Yeah, I guess is that
was the word.
Yeah,
that's right. Fructooligosaccharides and so on. And they're in our product. And as I said, they're stimulating the good bugs more than the bad bugs. But initially, you may have to scale back on the doses on our product if the FODMAPs in it are actually helping the bad bugs initially. But eventually, that within a week or two, that usually reverses and the good bugs then take over. Yeah.
Oh, Jody, you've just purchased, but we have a discount code. If you use the discount code Awaecnan, AWAECNAN, the 20% off in the checkout. So maybe your next lot, Jody, you've already purchased. Bummer. All right. So thank you so much.
Samples in, Flora.
All right, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time tonight. Even just going through this again, I've learned so much. I've written like oodles of notes down of things that I'm going to take care of, but also I'm going to watch it through again because there was so much in there that I can see how it's affected my health, how it's affected my life, my energy, weight, food sensitivities, reflux. I'm going to get on the phone and talk to my dad because he gets reflux, so I'm going to talk to him about it, and my auntie as well. So we've maybe got some faulty generational microbiome. But thank you so much for giving us your time and giving us all that information. I feel like some of it you can understand, but to get a deeper understanding from somebody actually does this stuff, right, and has researched it and looked at it under a microscope is a whole lot different from reading a blog post. So I really appreciate that you've taken the time, and we've gone way over, and you've been so generous answering the questions as well. So thank you again, and congratulations to those who turned up. You turned up for yourself. You showed up for yourself. You're here. Satina, you've it's, I don't know, what is it, 2 o'clock in the morning or something? 3 o'clock in the morning for you. 1 a.m. 1 a.m. Now it's what, 3 a.m. or 2 a.m. That's, hats off to you. Thank you for coming along and showing up for yourself and actually doing this work. It's so important for you as well, what you're experiencing. It's definitely the message that you need to hear. And we will download this session. I've recorded it. We'll put it on YouTube as soon as we can. You're going to have to just give us some time and we'll do that. We'll pop it on YouTube. But also those of you that are in our membership library, we will put it in there. And, again, I'll put all the links down in the description of the video as well. So thanks again, John and Jonathan, for your time and for being so generous with that time.
You're very welcome. See you later. Bye.
See you guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, everybody. Good luck.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.